Hello, change agents. And let that sink in for a minute, because potentially you've never thought of yourself that way. However, you should if you're doing insights correctly. In fact, what has been proven is that leaders in insight-driven organizations actually far outpace laggard competitors in customer engagement and market share growth when they truly are an insights-driven organization. However, you might be sitting here thinking, how do I do that? How do I really transform my organization to be an insights-driven organization? Well, I have good news for you. I'm going to give you 4 ground rules that you're going to want to start implementing today that will take you from really utilizing insights and analytics to having your organization crave them. However, before I do, I think it's really interesting. You know, they have me come up here and talk to you, and you should believe everything I say, but you don't know who I am. So let's do a quick little icebreaker, just so you guys have a little bit more background in who I am. Who's heard of 2 truths and a lie? Raise of hands. Great. For those of you who haven't, essentially I'm going to give you 3 statements, and I'm going to see how smart you are at depicting who you think I am. 2 of them will be a truth, and 1 is going to be a lie. So to begin, my first statement, and you don't need to answer if you think this is a lie right away or not. We'll go back to that. But the first is that I've done stand-up comedy in New York City. Second, at the ripe young age of 6 years old, while everyone else wanted to be a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor, I wanted to run an organization. Essentially, I wanted to be CEO. And then the third is that I brew beer. My specialty is a Belgium IPA called Hollish. If you're interested, I can tell you potentially, if that's not my lie, more about it later. So let's get some activity in the room and let's get some movement. I'm going to ask you to stand up for which one you think is the lie. First, who thinks that the stand-up comedy is a lie? Go ahead and stand up. And I don't want groupthink. So don't look around. Let me see how you feel. All right, you can sit down. Who thinks it was CEO? All right, and what about brewing beer? All right, so you guys are a divided audience. No shocking. The lie is actually that I've done stand-up comedy. Yeah, so you can pat yourself on the back if you guessed that. Very good. But what I do want to go back to is the CEO part. Now, I definitely did at 6 years old want to run an organization. However, I can say that in the last few years that I've been in this industry, I've changed that CEO to CKO, a Chief Knowledge Officer, because I am truly, truly passionate about what we do and the impact that we can make in an organization if we're doing it correctly. So I'm going to take you back about 2 years. I got a phone call from a recruiter, and you know how those go. You understand it's a recruiter, and immediately it's click. And so I still remember she called me and she said, are you interested in an opportunity? And as I was putting the phone down, she said, you get to start an insights function from scratch. And all of a sudden, the going down went, tell me more. Very, very quickly. Needless to say, I was super excited about this potential opportunity, so that when I went to the interview, I brought a few things with me that I'll be talking through a little bit later. But it's really helped me go into the interview and then immediately after get the job offer. And since being at Nature's Way, I went from an insights department of 1, myself, to 9 people, to 13 people, and actually other business units are now also asking to be part of my team and fund my team so that they have an insights individual as well. And if that wasn't important enough, we've also seen tremendous growth since they've brought insights into the organization. So the brand overall is seeing 5% growth, with our biggest brand Alive seeing 4%, and our other 3 strategic brands really seeing double-digit growth. And this is really because they've created an insights-driven organization, and we've put the consumer at the forefront. So you're probably sitting here saying, okay, Holly, like, tell me what these ground rules are. I know you're super intrigued. So the first one is demand a seat at the table. You should not be a wallflower in your organization. Remember earlier I had called you a change agent? That's exactly what you are. You need to be coming to the table every day, taking up a lot of room, and coming with helping the organization understand what they need to understand and what they need to do and the strategies that they need to build in order to grow. Our industries are changing at an exponential rate. It's up to us to make sure that our organizations are up to speed and foresights of the future. This is a chart from the Boston Consulting Group that actually makes my heart cry. I hate every time I see this. But they did an audit a few years ago with insights-driven organizations and where the insights department within an organization fell. What they found is that over 90% of benchmarked organizations fell within this order taker, so the lower half of this arrow boxes. I will actually say, and I want to provoke, we should never think of ourselves as market researchers. In fact, when I talk about my team, I say we are behavioral economists, we're applied psychologists, and most importantly, we're strategists. There is nothing that goes on in the organization that isn't vetted through my department. And that's because I show up every day at the table with strategies to help us win. And I'm vocal about it. I'm proactive about it. I tell them exactly what we need to understand and learn, and we go and we do it, and then we implement it. And it's not until you actually do that that you go from an order taker to really being a member of a strategic foresight organization. So how do you do that? Where do you even begin? What should that learning plan even look like for your organization? Well, there's some key components. First, always look at your communication. What is the brand equity that you want to exemplify? How do you make sure that you're relevant and resonate with your consumers starts with that equity. And it's not only in the media communications, but it's also packaging. Packaging, interestingly enough, is the one piece of communication that you can guarantee every one of your consumers sees. So it should not be taken lightly. The second is you really need to look at innovation and renovation. Needs are changing. You need to make sure your current products also stay up to speed with where the consumer is going, but then also that you're ideating on new products and where the consumer is going with them as well. You need to make sure that you have a learning plan that does both and that you are pushing your organization to think about that future. Third is strategic foundational work, and I actually can't stress this enough. A lot of times organizations want to just do research on the brand. And they totally forget that they have to understand the entire landscape, whether it's the category landscape, the consumer landscape. There's a lot of foundational work that needs to be done, not only for your brands, but also your competitors. This is a key aspect, and you should have at least 2 to 3 big foundational studies going every year. And the third is pricing and promotion. It's interesting how many organizations I've been in that we forget to almost look at this. We forget to understand, hey, are we promoting at the right amount to really drive the return? Are we leaving dollars on the table because our price is too cheap? Are we too high? Could we actually grow our penetration significantly if we reduce price just a little bit? These are all key pieces in a core learning plan that you should have when you walk into your organization. The second ground rule is don't stay in your swim lane. What this means is that our job is to actually connect the seemingly unconnected for those in the organization. We're not just marketing, we're not just sales. We should impact finance, product development, sensory. There's no aspect of the organization that we do not touch. We need to make sure that we're getting out of our swim lane and not just focusing on market research if we really want to drive impact. So at Nature's Way, when I began, we did a little of the foundational work to understand that Nature's Way is kind of like a shy kid in the corner. Doesn't really stand for much, but it's also not doing anything bad. So we created a whole equity around it, deployed some media behind it, but then we had to do a second look, and we realized our packaging was not exemplifying the equity that we wanted. So we went through a traditional PRS shelf test where there's the eye tracking, there's the shopping and findability. We make sure that our packaging's hitting the equity that we desire. And we got some good learnings. We figured that there was a path forward that wouldn't alienate our current base, would bring in new users, and would also move us in the right direction of the equity we wanted. However, what we also found out is that this new package was actually a new bottle. And in this new bottle became additional CapEx that the company would have to undertake. Now, if I was a traditional market researcher, I'd be like, okay, my job's done. I told you to move forward. But that's not where I want to take my department within the organization. I had my team sit down with finance, truly understand what the impact for that CapEx would be, went back to the research, saw what our increased penetration would be, and then was able to inform the organization how many years it would take to pay off that CapEx. That's connecting the seemingly unconnected. That's getting out of your swim lane, and that's driving impact for your organization. And that's what we all need to be doing if we want to be future change agents as well. Third sticky statement would be give them an epic picture. One of the things I'm constantly telling my team is that Insights is not made to inform, but rather inspire. We're here to be narrators of curating a compelling strategic story. That's our job. You've probably heard that people remember stories more than numbers. Well, I can guarantee you, people actually remember pictures even better than stories. Take a moment to think back to an old picture, maybe when you were a child. You probably, if that picture didn't exist, wouldn't remember that time. However, your brain automatically, within seeing that picture, starts filling in what that experience was like. And it's the same that we have to do within the organization. We have to create compelling, epic pictures for them so that they feel invested as well. One key piece of this is when I started, I kicked off a consumer segmentation. This is what I got back. Boring. I mean, who wants to read that? And please don't, because it's not going to get you anywhere. I mean, what exactly is a modern mom mean to the health and wellness goals of someone in my consumer target? So what I did is I flipped that on its head. I wanted to be able to find a way to really connect the organization to the different consumer targets. And I didn't have quite time yet to do the videos. Those came later. So what I did is I attached celebrities and redid the names so that people in the organization could really get a handle on who our different consumer targets were. I mean, come on, when I say George Clooney is a savvy well-being, you know what that means. Or Betty White is a doctor's orders, all of a sudden, you start putting more context, and this is all I had to give you. And you can tell exactly who these different targets are simply by a picture. Now, videos came afterwards as well that really helped exemplify each of these segments, and I would always say that we should create videos when possible. But this was a good starting point. And then the fourth, and certainly the last but not the least sticky statement, is bring sexy back. You have to ooze passion. I mean, who wants to sit there and follow someone that's not passionate about what they do? Did you know we actually have mirror neurons in our brain that we mimic what we see? That's why when you see someone yawn, you yawn. And when something has an infectious energy, it's contagious. You have to be passionate about this industry and what you're doing day in and day out, because I can guarantee you, it catches on. It becomes much easier to sell in things when you're passionate about it. So I love this quote by French journalist, writer, and aviator Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And he says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And it is so true. If you want to accomplish something, you can't just tell people what you want to do. You have to share that vision with them. So a little bit earlier, I had talked about, I went into my interview with some materials already created. They considered of a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is my chief knowledge officer. They also encompassed a vision, because I wanted the organization to know exactly what I was going to do if they hired me. And then it also had team principles, because let me tell you, people make a difference. If you don't want to just be seen as a market researcher, the people make a difference. This is really how you go from data-rich and insight-poor to data-rich and insight-rich. You have to hire the right people that are behind the same BHAG and vision as yourself and really want to make a difference. So I just want to end on something of why mindset matters so much. You see, probably since 1884, people have been trying to break the 4-minute mile. For years and years, people tried to do this, and no one accomplished it. In fact, scientists and doctors said that it was physically impossible, that your body would collapse in trying to do this. However, if you were bold enough to even try, it was going to be on the most perfect day, with no wind, on the perfect track that was clay, in a boisterous crowd. But you see, Roger Bannister, on May 6, 1954, broke that 4-minute mile with a 3-minute, 59.4-second mile in the worst conditions. It was rainy, it was cold, it was windy, it was on a bad track, and there wasn't a lot of people out there. And you see, it was interesting because after he broke it, 46 days later, someone else broke it. A year later, another 3. And since then, there's been over 1,400 people that have broke that record. So what happened? Did all of a sudden our physical nature change when once Roger Bannister broke that? No. The mindset changed. All of a sudden, what seemed impossible became possible. And that's how important mindset is. So when we think about as leaders, why this is so important, because I don't want to capitalize on the physical accomplishment here, but really the mental, is that we have to take that in as leaders as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been laughed at about my BHAG, how that's never going to happen. But I can tell you, as a leader, this is what we have to do. We have to visualize that end goal day in and day out, and regardless of what people tell us, still continue to believe in it. Our job as leaders, and especially insight leaders, is not to beat out our rivals. It's actually to change the impossible to the possible. So if you will join with me with these 4 ground rules, you can do the same, because I can tell you I'm making strides at Nature's Way. But it really does come from demanding a seat at the table and being proactive about what the company needs to learn and where it needs to go. It's also about not staying in your swim lane. we must connect the seemingly unconnected. We must also give them an epic picture, because we're not made to inform, but rather inspire. And then we have to bring sexy back. Come on, we have to ooze passion. What we're doing is exciting. So with that, if you'll take them and take those 4 little nuggets back home with you, you can accomplish the impossible. Thank you.